Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Remote Work Wednesday on behalf of the Remote Online Initiative and the K-State Extension Community Vitality Team. I'm Ron Wilson, Director of the Huck Boyd Institute for Rural Development here at Kansas State University. Thanks to Deborah Cole, who is a state specialist and program leader for the K-State Extension Community Vitality Team, of which I'm also a part. This is a project of the Remote Online Initiative. There you see the website, kansasremotework.com. And through that site, you can get information and enroll in month-long online classes, which enable participants to become trained and certified as a remote worker or a remote team leader. And as an outgrowth of that, we've begun these Remote Work Wednesday calls. Free Zoom call on the second Wednesday of each month for anyone interested in remote work. So 12 noon next month on March 11, it'll be Ben Lido, Executive Vice President of Make My Move, and he'll be telling us about the Make My Move company, which helps people relocating to Kansas communities and relocating workers. He's also worked closely with Kansas legislators and the state treasurer's office on the Home in the Heartland grant, which supports those moves. So be sure and join us to learn more about that. The goal of our call is simply to learn about the opportunities and challenges of remote and hybrid work for those who choose it. And so we're delighted that today's speaker is our friend Robert Disberger. Robert is a true entrepreneur, having been involved with business startups and operations, also is a longtime remote worker and himself. He's agreed to tell us about 30 years working from home, what actually works and what does not. We really appreciate Robert being with us. And Robert, if you would, please share about your journey and your experience working remotely.
Yeah, well, good morning, and thank you for the very nice introduction, Ron. Appreciate that a bunch. Can you guys see my screen okay? Nice. Okay, so yeah, I'm based out of Wamego, Kansas, and believe it or not, I am working remote. So right now, as we speak, I've been, it's fun to think about my career. When I first started networking remote was when I was in college, actually. And me and my brothers, we started a DJ business, a mobile disc jockey business, and we traveled all over the state of Kansas doing homecomings, weddings, proms, playing music. And that was my first business, and it was remote. So I worked from home, and then got into sales and worked for some different companies that I was able to work from home, and then most recently I've started setting up my second company in the government technology space, and we're working from home as well. And so we'll talk about some of the things that work really well from working from home. And some of this is just going to be like check marks. If you work from home already, you're probably like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this, but hopefully we'll catch something that maybe you can improve on or something that you can adjust. But definitely we'll get started here. But yeah, it's been I figured it up this week, 9 careers and different businesses that I have started, all working from home. And the last company that we started and successfully sold was we had 38 full-time employees all working remote. And so so we'll talk about some of those caveats for me personally working from home, but then also what I look for in having team members that are working from home as well and what I expect. So we'll kind of go from there. So mindset. When I'm at home and when I walk into this office at home, I shut the door. I mentally go into work mode. And what I mean by that is you can be you can be very distracted for working from home, right? It's like if you got kids, you got pets, you got a spouse. There's always things. And I'm sorry for the blurry picture there. It didn't turn out as good as I wanted. But the key thing is it's a state of mind that when I come in here and I shut that door, I'm at work and I'm going to get stuff done. So, and you can see here that you can be on a beach, you can be in a car, you can be working at home. Working remote doesn't mean just that you have a home office. Um, I have had territory that I've had multiple states that I worked in. And so my home office obviously was home base, but I spent, I know I worked at Civic Plus for a number of years, based out of Manhattan, Kansas. And, um, I worked probably, I bet 30% of the time in my car. And so it just working remote's fun. But basically, the other thing too is when you're working from home is I like to dress for success. I like to, even though I may be working from home and I don't maybe even have any meetings that I'm going to be on video, I still put on a nice shirt and, like I'm actually going to the office, but it mentally sets me for the tone for the day. And then I always have this, comment or thing that in the back of my mind that it empowers me that I can go make money on demand. And what I mean by that is when you have the ability to want to work remote and you can work from home, you work from your car, I suppose you can work from the beach, right? But it empowers you to, hey, I don't need to have necessarily a job, a certain type of job to I guess to pay the bills, or I don't have to necessarily live in a certain area. That I can be flexible and I can be creative. And one of my last corporate jobs that I had, I worked for a company out of California, and I was based right here in this office, but yet I got paid from a company from San Ramon, California. And so that was all the beauty of being able to work remote. And then, but a couple things that work really well and that don't work well is if you don't set boundaries, right? So if you have family that lives in the same house and you or a spouse or kids, it's always important to make sure you set boundaries with your family. So clear communication for your office hours. When my door's shut, people know that's kind of when Robert's hunkered down and I'm making things happen. And I always feel like you got to protect your time because one of the benefits of working from home is you get to work from home, right? You don't have to commute. You don't have to, a lot of times I will bring my breakfast down to my office and eat as I'm reading through emails or looking through documents. But it is very important to protect your time um, when you work from home. And I think that's where when we saw COVID and a big shift in people working from home that never had worked from home, it was interesting. There were time management became an issue for a lot of people. And so that's something to think about too, is own your time. The other thing is too, is, infrastructure that works, right? Quality computer. You don't have to spend a ton of money on a computer, but hey, when you do a Zoom call or if you're trying to pull up an Excel document, or do some research on the internet, hey, it pays to have something that's fairly nice, that's quick and reliable. And then just make sure you got a microphone and camera. This camera I'm using today, it's probably, I bet it's 8 years old. And it's just a Logitech camera, nothing too fancy. And I have a microphone that I spent maybe $90 on. But the other key piece too is Wi-Fi. You want to make sure it's fast and reliable and pay a little extra to have that extra bandwidth. Something to think about if you're sharing a house with a roommate or, family. If they're streaming something, you got to make sure that you have enough bandwidth. If you're on a Zoom call and they're streaming a movie, you got to make sure you got that extra bandwidth. And then when I was traveling quite a bit, it was always important to have a hotspot on my phone and to make sure that I had plenty of store or data on that so I could travel and I could, here again, make money on demand, be wherever I'm at, I can be in business. So then another thing is too, if you're working from home, make sure you have a dedicated work spot. It was interesting as I hired a lot of different sales reps. It was interesting how many we'd always ask, do you have a dedicated space to work? Because we knew that would hurt productivity if you didn't. And so, make sure, basic things, right? Got a separate table or desk that you can put a monitor, two monitors, plug into your laptop. Um, one thing that I found is you can get a for $79 at Best Buy, you can get a docking station that allows you to plug in your computer to a couple monitors and an external keyboard. So you can actually do a little bit more work. I found that I'm about twice as productive with two monitors than I am with one. But make sure it's a quiet environment. You got a comfortable chair, proper lighting. You got some light that shines on you if you're doing webinars or you're doing team meetings at the company you're working for. Just make sure that you're presenting yourself well, because if you're not meeting at the office, when you're meeting on Teams meetings or Zoom calls, that's when you make your impressions about who you are and what you're doing. So it's always important to put your best foot forward. So, and then I would not encourage you to work from bed or a couch. A bed, I would be back in bed sleeping again. So, I would say that here again, it's a mental state that if I'm at my desk, I'm working. And it's those disciplines that help. So, another key piece that helps me out in setting up for success is setting clear daily goals, meaning that I write down the things that I want to accomplish today, this week, and then I'm able to mark those off as I'm getting through them, right? And so it uh, keeps me busy at hand, because it's on a nice day. Ron was talking about just the other day, it was like 80 degrees here in Manhattan. It's like I wanted to go outside and do some work, landscaping, but it's kind of like, no, I've got these three things I got to get done today before I can go do that. And so those are little pieces of discipline that help. So anyway, but I build tasks. I always start with my high value ones first, and then if I got time to do the other ones, and I'll knock them out. Or if I push them to the next day, that's fine. But make sure you get your high value tasks done. So, and then don't leave your desk until the task is complete. It's here again, it's easy to get up and run up to the kitchen, grab another snack. Make sure you finish those tasks at hand and segment your day. Uh, set office hours. This is something that I found I didn't do in the beginning, and I worked like a dog. It seemed like I was working all the time, because one thing I heard, from people, it's like, oh, I'd never worked from home because I wouldn't be able to shut my computer down, or I wouldn't ever leave my office. I'd be probably in my office all day. And what you've got to do for I mean, for health, right? Physical and mental, is to define your start and stop times, and communicate that to the people you work with. Hey, this is usually when I start work, and this is usually when I finish. Because if somebody sends me an email or a text for work and it's after, say, 6 o'clock at night, there's they don't have the expectation that I'm going to answer them, and that I'll probably answer them at 8 o'clock in the morning when I come down to my office. And so it just allows continuity there. Um, and then it also it's when you work from home too, sometimes you feel like you got to be on call all the time, and then that can kind of burn you out. And so by doing these things, it does create predictability and trust. Because it's like, one thing is like, oh, I have all these remote employees, how do I know that they're working, right? Well, by showing up just like you would at the office at the same time, and leaving at the same time, that gives trust and in the predictability piece. So, but the other nice thing about working from home is if my son has a basketball game during the day, guess what? I can block it off on my calendar and I can go, right? There is some flexibility with that, that I do absolutely love working from home. One thing I didn't share with you guys is for one, I had one job in Omaha. I moved up to Omaha and I took this job that required me to go into the office. It was a 20-minute commute. I know, painful, right? 20-minute commute. And I had to go into the office and be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't leave until 5. And I realized I did that for 3 years, and I absolutely hated it, because that was the first time ever in my life that I had to actually go to the office. And so my next job that I took, I went back into working remote, and I just enjoy those. If you're disciplined, those little extra benefits of working home really pay off. So the other thing too is during the day, take some breaks, right? When you do your task, you knock one out, make sure you get out of your chair, go get that snack, go outside if it's a nice day, take a 10-minute walk and come back. Those are the great benefits of working from home. Uh, and uh, and it will definitely help you really with burnout and keeping you refreshed during the day. Because, one thing about the office is when you go into the office, there is some socialization, right? See people in the office. So you take those breaks by visiting with people. When you're at home and you're working, sometimes you can be very task oriented, right? And it's like, man, it's 8 hours have gone by and I haven't even got up and moved, right? Well, that's not healthy either. So just to recap, what doesn't work, right? um, Multitasking constantly and having like 8 tasks going at the same time or trying to if you don't have those boundaries, right, you may have your kids coming in, you may have your spouse or a roommate or somebody coming in bugging you and you're trying to do some work and then they're asking you to help them with a chore at the house that just makes it tough, right? A lot of times I tell my wife, I'm like, "Hey, I will be free at 5:30 tonight," and so she just knows that I'm just going to be in meetings. But working without structure, obviously, you're less productive. It's unfortunate because I have had to let a few sales reps go, and most of my career has been in business development and sales, but having great salesperson and having to let them go because they didn't have discipline and no structure in their day-to-day routine cost them a lot of money. And so it's important to make sure that you correct these if you're kind of falling short on some of these. Not having daily goals, poor internet, bad audio, that only works for a while, but you got to figure that out if you are heavy on Zoom calls and different meetings, and if that's the lifeblood of your business, it's an investment as I look at it in your business and in your career. So, and then not having any boundaries with your family. So, and I did at one point, we homeschooled 4 kids and I was working from home in my office and homeschooling 4 kids, and age 8 and under. Definitely, you had to have very strong boundaries, and occasionally they would come in unannounced, and you kind of brush it off, if you're in a video call with somebody, but that's okay. It all works, right? And what was nice too is when COVID hit and everybody started working from home, all of a sudden it was a cool thing to work from home. And I'd been trying to hide it for, in the 90s and the 2000s, 2010s, right? That it's like, I thought, if you weren't professional if you worked from home. Well, now today it's like everybody would love to work from home. So anyway, I guess so it's cool to work from home. At least that's what I think. So then as a leader, if I'm working in a business that I have employees that work remote, one thing that when we hire people, we look at, we measure output, not necessarily hours. So we expect our remote staff to do a certain amount of work, right? Task that we know that they can get done, and we don't manage their hours. We just manage their productivity, if that makes sense, their output. And then clear expectations, right, with our staff, right? What we expect if they are working remote and making sure that here again they're hitting their task. And then just weekly check-ins, or in some cases we do every other day check-ins, how things going, what you need help with, and that sort of thing. And so making sure that if you are stepping away for a couple hours or a kid's event, or you got to go to the doctor, it's always important to make sure you let the people that you're working with know that because they can't simply walk by your office and see that your light's out and you're gone. And so it's always important to make sure you communicate and keep your calendar up to date if you're working with a team of people. And then really final takeaway is remote work requires discipline and process. And while it is fun and it gives you all sorts of flexibility, um, it does have a few strings attached to it, right? Just like anything does. But just remember, environment matters more than people think, right? So just having um, a place that you like to work from that you've, from home, that you've made it your own, can be a lot of fun. And then mindset drives productivity. So it's like I always kind of have this thing. I know it sounds shallow, but I always kind of have this thing that if I have to get out of bed today, somebody's going to pay for it. Meaning, really, what it means is I'm going to get up and I'm going to do some work and I'm going to make it happen. And then structure does create the extra freedom that you will all enjoy working from home or working remote. So anyway, that is my presentation. Ron, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Outstanding. Let me make a comment and then I have a question. And folks, feel free to put a question in the chat for Robert, and or you can unmute here in a minute. The other day, I heard the term digital sunset. I forget the context in which I heard that, but I was intrigued by that. And apparently, what the guy meant was he turned off his phone at hour X, and so he was literally not available for any purpose. Kind of amazing this day and age. I'm not sure I'd go that far, um, that it reinforces your point about office hours and structure, I think. My question has to do with disparate time zones. I mean, you mentioned you were working for a California company at one point, and in another case, 38 employees. I don't know if they were all in one time zone, but how do you manage that, and how do you track things across multiple time zones?
Well, I think it's actually, Ron, it's a great question. I guess I've done it for so long. I kind of think it's normal, right, to work with people across different time zones. So until you brought that up, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that would be a thing. But when I worked for a California company, they're 2 hours behind us. So when it's 8 o'clock in the morning there, it's 6 a.m. there. But my work was done here in Central Time, say, for example. And so I would just know that if there was something I needed to send back to the home office or I needed to have some conversations with them, I couldn't do that until after 10 o'clock in the morning. So I would plan my day to where I would do, say, if I was in sales, I would be doing my prospecting, I'd be doing emails, I'd be doing things that I could start doing at 8 o'clock here, and then know that I'd shift to where I could, a lot of times we'd have Zoom calls and different things like that with the home office after 10 o'clock in the morning. And so, but yes, we did have, and when we started GovBuild, and we had employees in 6 different states. And Phoenix always screws me up because half the year they're 1 year behind, 1 hour behind you, and then the other half of the year they're 2 hours behind you because they don't ever switch with daylight savings time. And so it's like, but it's just like being cautious with those employees. Like, hey, I'm not going to set a standing meeting with them at 8 o'clock my time because that would be 6 o'clock Williams time. So we just, you just mentally start figuring out where everybody works, and then kind of those schedules. And then I guess, Ron, that's probably the best way. It just takes a little time to get to know everybody, and then just be considerate of their work schedule, right? I don't expect when I hire people remote, and here again, if they work on the East Coast, I don't expect them to work till 7 o'clock every night, because I work till 6, right? You got to be that's one reason why people love working from home is they like that flexibility. And so here again, when you measure output versus hours, that's a lot more successful formula.
Great points. I've found that sometimes it's helpful to use that schedule send function on my emails. I may prepare an email at a certain hour, but if I want it to be at the top of somebody's list, I might schedule it for 8 a.m. in the morning tomorrow.
It's true. And I don't use that function very often, but I should. That's a good point. Because I just know that if I'm sending an email, after somebody's probably done for the day, I just know they probably won't look at it. So I send it anyway, but you're being much more polite and considerate.
Well, sometimes I found it helps, but don't know if it's all that. What about performance reviews, Robert? How do you like an do you have an annual performance review with your employees, and how is that also on Zoom and email? Do you
It
ever
is.
do in person?
It is when we would when I had GovBuilt, we'd meet once a year in person. So we'd get everybody together once a year. Um, and we wouldn't necessarily do reviews then, but we always found that there was still value in teams getting together. But annual reviews, we usually do quarterly reviews, and then the annual review is not a surprise. But here again, it's based on, from a sales perspective, here again, is it's based off of KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. And going through those on those weekly check-ins kind of gives you an idea what that quarter looks like. And then when you go and discuss those pieces, it's like, hey, here's where, you fell short. Here's where you did really well. Here's, I'm seeing that you're responding very well to, clients in a timely fashion. Um, but doing annual reviews or quarterly reviews, as long as you've got clear communication and expectations, makes that whole process a lot easier.
Very good. Let me see if there are questions. I'm not seeing questions in the chat. If anyone has a question, feel free unmute, raise your hand, post a question. Um, I appreciate your point about the high value tasks first. I must admit, there have been times when I think I've added items to my list so I can check them off. Not a recommended principle of management. Uh, but to identify the high value tasks and tackle them first, I just think that's a outstanding strategy for going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. I did want to share it with everybody. I did grow up actually out in Western Kansas, out in Colby, Kansas, and I've often thought it'd be fun to move back there and retire in Colby. Yeah, I just probably have to talk my wife into it a little bit more. But the cool thing is I could move there. The cool thing about working remote is you could live in Colby, you could live in Oakley, Kansas, you could live in Sublette. It just doesn't matter as long as you got those key infrastructure pieces available to you. The world is your oyster. It doesn't, and so that is the fun thing about the technology we have today is it just allows us so much more flexibility.
And you might be dealing with a client, a customer, a team member who is stuck in some downtown office in a high rise and dealing with a half-hour commute. And you can appreciate how much better off you may be. I just visited with a gentleman who grew up in Oregon and was doing software development on the West Coast. And COVID hit, he could go anywhere. And a friend had visited Kingman, Kansas, and so he chose to move to Kingman, Kansas, and continues to work for that company remotely, and that was his choice.
Mm.
So it's great when it works well for people. Question from Chelsea Hanson: do you find yourself having problems getting up because of a lack of commute in the morning? What motivates you in the morning?
Well, when you have small kids, that's an easy way to get up. But I think here again, it's very similar to having your task, right? So one thing we talked about is creating your daily task. What would be better than doing that would be creating your task for the next day before you end your day. So you knew already first thing in the morning what you needed to do. But it's here again, it's setting your alarm clock. It's like, hey, I need to be at work at 8. For me, I've always was measured more on productivity than I was hours of work when I worked remote. So I had to be very disciplined to make sure I was back in the office at 8 o'clock because I felt like I was losing time in getting the work I needed to get done for myself, right? I worked on commissions and I knew that I was cutting out, I was taking money out of my family's paycheck if I didn't get up and was disciplined. And so I think you need to evaluate just how important your time is, and then I think you won't have any problem getting up.
Make money on demand would be an incentive
Yeah. Okay.
statement. Um, Random question. What are your thoughts about Zoom backgrounds, professional and promoting your business versus no background, blurred, using what is behind you if clean and uncluttered? Any thought about?
Right. Yeah. So I think they're all great. The one thing you don't want to do is I remember when COVID hit and people were working from home and they'd be on video and their background was like a storage room or something. They were down in the basement and they had all these boxes. And of course, anything went, right? We all got it. But I'm like, you definitely didn't want to do that long term. And so if you don't have a good backdrop, use a nice professional backdrop. I think it's great to have your logo. If you want to have your logo or something in like up in the corner or something like that, I think that's great. I think what Ron, your backdrop looks great. I mean, those are all things. It just really depends on your audience and who you're talking to. The big key thing is you just want to be professional. Blurred is great. I think blurred is great. A lot of times I'll have my screen on blurred, but behind me, I don't even have any pictures up on my wall. And I've worked in this office for 12 years well, since I moved here. But anyway, the point is whatever works good for you, roll with it. But it's got to be professional but it can be a source of advertising your business. Sure.
It's an interesting question. During COVID, we saw way too much laundry and XYZ in the background. And uh, so the professional look, whatever that might be for you, great points. Other
Yeah.
questions?
I have a question. I'm curious how you manage the lack of social interaction because I feel like that is like for me that's the hardest part of working from home. Like I really enjoy the flexibility and having a comfortable office. I can go to doctor's appointments and I can come back and all of
Mhm.
that jazz. But like I don't have kids, so I'm maybe not getting as much of that, busy chat in the evening. So I was curious how you recommend those of us manage, like do we just schedule a lot for our evenings or do we try to coax our coworkers out of their homes if they if they live in town and have lunch with them or something?
I think you hit it right there on the head on the end as far as coworkers go. There is nothing more valuable in a working relationship than getting together from time to time, right? We're obviously talking about remote and the benefits of that, but there is a huge benefit for us getting together, shaking hands, giving a hug, talking and being present with people. And I think, yeah, those outreaches, I think your coworkers would appreciate it if you work local. A lot of times my team or my business partners, we don't live that close, and so what we would do is we'd always make time to pick up the phone and just call them and just chat with them. Maybe not an official Teams meeting or, hey, but just, call and make sure that, you keep those personal relationships going, but making time for that, right? And or I'm kind of an extrovert well, I'm not kind of, I am an extrovert. So I love hanging out with people and doing that. But I guess I'm always finding ways to communicate with people. But I also do appreciate not having a busy office, right? That I can shut the door and I can get to work because I'm easily distracted. If you can tell by all my bullet points today, task oriented. Well, that's because I'm not, right? So I have to have these things in front of me to make sure I stay on task. Because I'd rather pick up the phone and call you, Shelby, and say, "Hey, what's going on? Are you working hard today?" And so there is a time for that.
I really appreciate that question. We use the term social capital. Building those relationships, that social capital, that's your bank account, and you may have to draw on it sometime, and it may help you advance. So there's, I think, practical reasons as well as just kind of the personal emotional value of building those relationships in whatever way you can.
I have
Great
a
questions.
question
Yeah.
about how to find an appropriate remote job. So currently I work for a grant that will be ending in September. So thinking ahead, I've been working at home now for 3 years. I retired special ed teacher. I just like being able to have the flexibility. If I want to work on a weekend or, my husband's gone in the evening, I can put in a few hours and I enjoy what I do, helping and providing resources for our community. But the grant world is a different world nowadays, so things are changing, and I'm not sure that I want to hop back into the grant world again, for that same reason. But really want to keep working and doing a few hours a week remotely if I could. So just curious, other than like Kansas Works and Indeed and all those kinds of things, is it just really like word of mouth? Like she's saying, I don't have a lot of people that are doing remote work, so I don't have like a big pool of people to, look at or converse with about remote work. So,
That's a great question, and I don't know if I'm going to have a good answer, so I definitely would open this up to anybody else. But for me, I've been for the last 15 years mostly, I've been in government technology, so working with municipalities, cities, and counties all across the country, and so I've developed a pretty good network of people in my industry, and so and we're always talking back and forth between our contacts, peers about jobs, different things that are opening up, work, and you might just put it out there to your network that it's like, hey, I'm looking to do a remote job, and it is where are you located at, Pamela?
I'm currently in Southeast Kansas. So someday move to the beach and remote work from there would be the goal. So, yeah.
Yes. All right. I'm with you on that. So but I think, obviously, when you look at Indeed or some of those, I mean, there's always lots of scams you got to be careful about.
Mhm.
Um, they anyway, I've seen the downside of people trying to, but you find a good reputable company, um, and start looking. There's customer service jobs, there's sales jobs, there's bookkeeping jobs, there's, content writing jobs, there's all sorts of great jobs out there that are available. One thing that we found some really good talent over the years is a website called Upworks.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but it's where you can take whatever you're great at and you can you build your profile, what your skill sets are, and then people will actually find you, that will match a skill set like that, and they'll pay you per job or per hour. And it's really a way that you can find people across the country that are wanting to work remote that have very specific skill sets.
Okay. Yeah, that would be a good one. Good place to start anyway. Thank
Yeah,
you.
anybody else want to comment on that?
Well, I'm glad that Pamela, you mentioned Kansas Works, and that's a good place to start. They do have virtual job fairs on occasion, and you can go to that website and you can narrow your search to remote work opportunities specifically. Just as Robert said, it sounds like you're on top of it, Pamela. But there's options out there. Virtual vocations is one that we've communicated with. Uh, so there are options. Just be wise in the way you check them, I'd say.
Yeah, and I've looked at a few things and I'm like, yeah, it sounds too scammy. I don't even want to go there. And you know that if you have to pay something, it's definitely a scam. So it's like, but my skill set is, community outreach liaison and providing resources for different community members and agencies. I work for the other KU. And so I want to be able to continue in that because I really enjoy helping people and making connections and doing that kind of work. And then I have a master's in special education. So, of course, I could go that route. I haven't done that for a few years. I left that during COVID, but just want to make sure that I'm making the right choice. And I'm at the age where I can be picky now. So, going to do that too. Thank you.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question.
LinkedIn might also be a good resource because there are a lot of remote positions that roll through LinkedIn. I feel like there are very few in-person positions, but I would recommend though that you go to that actual company's website to see the position versus just apply through LinkedIn? Because I don't necessarily think the dates on LinkedIn are accurate. Like the position opening might have, the deadline might have already closed, but LinkedIn will still take your application, so you feel like maybe you're a candidate and really you aren't,
Right.
or things like that, I guess. But
Yeah, and that's I do have a LinkedIn account for my work currently, but I haven't created one just personal, just for starting to look for another job. But that's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby.
And Shelby, where are you based out of?
I'm in Manhattan.
Oh,
Yep. I work for K-State, so College of Ed. But yeah.
very good. Yeah, I was just like, yeah, it was like Pamela's like from Southwest Kansas. Anyway, it's just neat to hear where everybody's at.
Got a good group on today. Any other comments or questions? Well, Robert, thanks for an outstanding presentation today. I'll give you a virtual round of applause here at least. And thanks for your excellent comments and very informative. Appreciate the good work you're doing and useful tips. Very helpful. Wednesday, March 11, 12 noon Central Time. Join us. Ben Lido will be talking about the Make My Move company and the Home in the Heartland grant, which is helping Kansas communities and Kansas workers connect and potentially relocate, attract talent to rural Kansas. So we're excited about that. Join us March 11. For now, thanks for joining us and have a wonderful Remote Work Wednesday. Thank you, everyone. Terrific, Robert.